Our next speaker is somebody who I know fairly well, and I'm very happy that I made his acquaintance. Just real quick, Susan Gerbic and I did a psychic sting about a half a year ago. And actually, it was longer. The article came out. Article came out in the New York Times, and it received a lot of attention because it was very successful, and we were really proud of it. It took a lot of hard work, but one of the things that our next speaker, Thomas Westbrook, did was to create a really powerful video which shows how we did it, how we went about it, and showing the truth and the lies as they unfold, pretty much not in real time, but through interview segments with Susan and myself. So before I introduce him, we're not going to be able to see that today, but I would direct you to Holy Kool-Aid, and this one is called Thomas John Busted. Thomas John was the psychic who we busted. So I hope there's no Thomas John fans in the audience. You don't even know who he is. Good, don't worry about it. We buried him, okay? He is, anyway. So Thomas does an incredible editing job. I'm really happy to know him. I almost said blessed to know him. Do you believe that? I don't know where that came from. Must be the bright lights or something. So without any further ado, this guy who does this, one of the hardest working skeptics I know, Thomas Westbrook. So nice to have you, okay? Take care.
Thank you. What's up, skeptics? Thomas Westbrook here. I am a full-time science communicator, and I debunk psychics for a living. So to start off my presentation, I'm going to start by performing a psychic show. Can I get one person to come up to the stage real quick? Just one person from the front to help me out as a volunteer. You're going to hand out 3 of these to random members of the audience, and I will not look and see who they are. Just let me know once all 3 are handed out. Okay, so I cannot see who they are. I'm not using mirrors. And there's one thing that is in common with all 3 of these people that they do not know that they have in common. Okay? Right now, there is something that all 3 of you believe that is wrong. It seems like people aren't impressed. And that is because I stacked the deck. The truth of the matter is there's something that you believe that's not true. There's something that you believe that's not true. There's something that all the way in the back, well, actually, or in Dr. Duty's water, that is not correct. And while you might be saying, okay, you stacked the deck, but I've seen real psychics do it. The fact of the matter is, they stacked the deck too. And here's an example. If I were to say the name John Smith, there's someone here with the name John Smith or a connection to John Smith, you probably wouldn't be very impressed, right? John Smith, super common name. But did you know that James, not John, is actually the most common male name in America?
Who is James?
Who has the Jim in that family? Or the James?
Is the Jimmy or James connected?
Did you know that Mary is the most common girl's name in America?
The name of either Mary, Margaret.
Is there a Mary person, like a Marie, a Mary?
Got a connection to Mary. I'm getting Marie, Mary, Maria.
And who is the MR name? Mark, Mary, Marie?
It's amazing how many times you can roll 6s every time when you play with loaded dice. The fact is, though, the sad fact is that 33% of Americans believe, can you fill in the sentence? Actually, only 33% believe in evolution by natural selection. Psychics, 41% believe. To put that another way, there are more people in America right now who believe in psychics than who believe in natural selection. And if that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what does. Now, what's the harm of all this, right? You know, so they believe something, it's you know, all in good fun, right? They go to and they get their astrology reading and they have a good laugh about it. Unfortunately, there's a lot more harm than people realize.
Self-proclaimed psychics frequently target the elderly and financially desperate all over the world.
My mother was 80 years old and suffering with onset Alzheimer's. I came across checks that she was writing weekly in the amount of $59 each time. And then I found checks that she'd written even twice a week and twice a day. And all of these checks added up to over $2,400 in the span of a year.
Psychics will prey upon the most vulnerable people in society. They prey upon the elderly, those with dementia, those with Alzheimer's, those who are going through a bereaved state after losing a loved one. They will rob you of your life savings, and they will have zero remorse about it.
If we run deficient in earth energy, then our thyroid starts going, whoa, something's wrong here. One of the things that the yogis recommended is that you get your neck right flat on the ground so you can touch the electricity of the earth right there to your neck so you can get those electrons flowing right into your thyroid. That it's actually been found if you ground yourself to the earth, you have got to cut your thyroid medication.
You know, it's almost funny right up until he starts telling people to cut their thyroid medication. Does anyone know who this is? This man, he's not just some unknown loony, some quack out there that nobody knows who he is. This guy has 12 million Facebook followers. That's a 12 followed by 6 zeros. Here's another clip from the same guy, just to show you the kind of harm that the stuff that he's propagating is doing. This guy, he's a known anti-vaxxer. What does David Avocado Wolf recommend instead of vaccines?
We're going to take your urine and we're going to give you a urine vaccine. A urine vaccine, right? Which is, by the way, the most powerful vaccine of all. And is very effective at controlling cancer. And if you vaccinated yourself with your first clear urine each day, the midstream of it each day, as we did at Dr. Hitt's clinic under medical supervision, you don't have to do medical supervision. What we do is we teach people how to do it so they can do it at home.
They teach people how to vaccinate themselves with their own urine so that you don't have to go in and get cancer treatment. Are you beginning to see some of the harm that's being done by this? This man operates a website where he sells these products, and at the bottom of the website is in fine print a disclaimer that says that none of these products have been approved by the FDA, that none of these products actually cure or prevent disease. They have to put that little disclaimer there, but once it's up there, they can give anyone a run for their money. They can sell whatever snake oil that they want, and they're in the clear legally. Here's another case, a little bit less on the money-making side and more on just what happens when you believe things that aren't true, when you follow pseudoscience. Here's a couple. They opted for faith healing for their kids instead of giving them antibiotics. And they lost one child, and the judge gave them a warning and said, don't do it again. And they did it again, and their second child died of pneumonia. We have a cure for pneumonia, and it isn't prayer. This is what happens when you follow pseudoscience, when you don't follow scientific consensus, when you don't learn how to think critically, and when you don't go out there and get even just the most basic science education in order to understand how the world works and how we know that it works. Now, before you lose hope, I want you to grab your flags, the blue ones and the red ones. Actually, just grab the blue ones real quick, and I'm gonna run down this list. And as I say off everything on this item, if there was a point in your life, either in the past or now, that you believed one of the things on this list, raise the blue flag. Astrology. Got a few people? Psychics or extrasensory perception. Palm reading. Tarot cards. Anti-vax rhetoric, young earth creationism, the moon landing was a hoax, Bigfoot, 9/11, 9/11 was an inside job, the Loch Ness Monster, Area 51 holds aliens, miracles, ghosts, the Bermuda Triangle, auras or chakras, the evil eye, angels and or demons, climate change denial, and the belief in good or bad luck. Or karma. Anyone believe in karma? Now, how many of you who raised your flags earlier have changed your mind on one or all of these issues? It is possible. And I'm right there with you. To give you a little bit of an idea into where I'm coming from as to what my backstory is, I was a young earth creationist. I was born in the US, but I went at the age of 3 to a Muslim country in the former Soviet Union, where my parents taught me in a homeschooled environment that the earth was created in 6 days, that it is 6,000 years old, and that miracles are real, demons and angels are real, that God actually answers prayer and you can heal people. Speaking in tongues was legit, that's the language of angels that you're speaking, that God is just pouring his spirit into you. And I believed in pretty much everything in the Bible literally. It wasn't until I went to college and I really started digging deep and diving into this stuff and exploring it with the understanding that truth withstands scrutiny. That if something is true, that no matter how much you scrutinize it, it's not going to change the fact that it's true. And if it's not true, we shouldn't be afraid to scrutinize it, because then we can figure out that we believed something that was wrong. And now we're better equipped to deal with the real world around us. It wasn't until I went through that process that I was finally able to re-examine my positions and critically examine them and come out on the other side a little bit closer to the truth. When I was in college, freshman year, there was a series of videos where, after a little while on YouTube, any of you ended up on the weird side of YouTube, where you just end down that rabbit hole and it starts recommending stranger and stranger videos? I ended up with one that was trying to convince me that aliens are held at Area 51, which actually, if you're not aware of right now, there's a Facebook group that is planning to storm Area 51 in September because they can't stop all of us. And we want to see where those aliens are at. So I believed this, and I was trying to convince my roommate that there's actual footage of real aliens on YouTube. And I showed him the clips, and he just started laughing his ass off. And I was like, what? No, look, it's real, it's legit. And he's like, dude, that's from the movie Signs. Somebody had taken a clip from the movie Signs and edited it with little overlays to make it look like it was news footage. And they showed it up as, oh, hey, the aliens are among us, and this is what the government doesn't want you to know. And instantly, I have never turned so quickly from a belief that I held in my life than when I'm standing there with my roommates in the room, laughing and mocking me with egg on my face, realizing that I just made one of the biggest intellectual blunders of my early college career. And I changed my mind. Not everything on the internet is true. So I was initially going to have, in this talk, I was going to have a section at the beginning where I walked you through how to detect baloney and how to tell fact from fiction. But I feel like there's a couple of speakers here who have already done that to some extent, discussing critical thinking and how to understand truth. And because this has also been covered in large part by people far greater than me, like Dr. Carl Sagan with his baloney detection kit and the Demon Haunted World. Skeptic Magazine has put out videos where Michael Shermer has gone over how to detect baloney. I'll kind of run through a couple things. One is you need to look at the source. How reliable is the source material? Is this somebody's blog, some anonymous blog that doesn't cite sources, or is it the New York Times? Those two are not on equal weight. Do they cite the sources, and what are they citing? Is it a blog citing another blog, or is it an actual scientific peer-reviewed medical journal that they're citing? These two things are not equal. There's questions that you think, just is this how the world works? Based off of everything around you that you know, do you have to rely on some grand conspiracy and rely on all these assumptions? Or can you cut through the crap and use Occam's razor to try to figure out which two hypotheses actually make fewer assumptions? There's lots of tools like this, and you can go online and you can look up, how to think critically. You can look up the baloney detection kit. You can read the Demon Haunted World. But for the majority of this talk, because I'm speaking to a room full of science lovers, skeptics, intellectuals, PhDs, most of this you already know. So for the rest of my time, I want to focus on how to actually communicate science to the general public. And I realize that I'm doing this as someone who I have skills with animation, and I do make videos. I know that most of you don't have the time to go out and learn how to animate, and most of you won't. But a lot of these skills, or a lot of the things that I talk about in the video, don't necessarily require any experience with animation or video production. You can use a lot of these just in your day-to-day conversations with people around you. If you write and you put up blogs or something, you can use these in those settings. You can use them in podcasts. No matter how you communicate with the general public, these are some tools that I think may help you to effectively communicate science to the public. First of all, how can we change people's minds? There's two different ways that we can communicate with, or that I want to cover. One is how to psychologically connect with people, and the other is how to communicate effectively. And they're kind of two sides to the same coin, but essentially, one is how do we make them like you to connect with them on a psychological level, and the other is how do we make them understand you? How do we get our points across in a way that people can actually wrap their heads around? First, I'll focus on the left side. How many of you have read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? How many of you, upon reading the book, thought, oh, come on, that's like the most common sense book ever. It's just like how to not be a dick to people. Now, the thing is, whenever someone recommends this book and anyone counters with that and says, oh, well, that book's so common sense and you don't understand, this is so obvious and stuff. Instantly in doing that, they violate all of the things laid out in the book as to how to actually, reach people in a way that is like approachable and decent. But one of the quotes in that book is, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Nobody cares how smart you are. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Try to relate to people. Try to put yourself in their shoes and don't instantly write them off as dumb or stupid or an idiot because they don't necessarily they're not privy to the same information that you are. Try to empathize. I had just recently, I went to get my hair cut. And my stylist was doing my hair and she was telling me how it was a really difficult month for her because she had just gone through a breakup. But on the plus side, she didn't necessarily feel too bad about it because she took consolation in the fact that it wasn't her fault because her mom told her that Mercury is in retrograde. And I could have responded to that in a couple of different ways. The first thing that I could have done was I could have instantly been like, I debunk psychic stuff for a living. You came to the right place. Or you're awfully stupid. Or how could you possibly believe that? Do you think that any of those methods would have been, endearing to her, or would have won her over to my side? Do you think that I would have been able to change her mind? If someone doesn't feel respected by you, they're not going to listen to you. So first we have to show people that we can relate and we can listen. Instead, what I did was I heard her out and I heard her whole thing and I was like, man, like that really sucks you went through a breakup. Like, I'm really sorry about that. Meet the people where they're at. And then I chose not to just take something away from her, this hope that it's not her fault. And instead I replaced it with something better, something more positive. I said, I don't really believe in astrology, but, and it's fine that you do, but don't you find it so much more empowering to realize that, like, we're in control of our own destiny and we don't have to rely on the positions of the planets? Sure, there's things out there that are outside of our control. The person that you were dating, they could have been extremely immature. They could have been unwilling or unable or at a stage in their life where they're not really able to cope with the relationship. Those things are things that are outside of your control. That's not your fault. No matter what way you look at it, you can say it's not my fault because of the planets, or it's not my fault because this is another person. But just approaching it with a slightly different angle goes so much further. Here's a comic. People are stupid. Sigh. No, people aren't stupid. On average, people are of average intelligence. When you say people are stupid, you mean stupid compared to your expectations. What you're really saying is other people aren't as smart as me. And maybe you're right, in which case I'd like to bestow upon you the first annual award for excellence in being very smart. May you continue to grace the internet with your wisdom. If you make people feel dumb, all you do is push them away. Instead, let's make it a joint quest for truth. It's not me versus you. It's not my knowledge versus your knowledge. It's not this hostile game of, winning points. It's, hey, I disagree with you, but maybe I'm wrong. Here's all the evidence that I have. Let's go on this journey together. Let's go on this adventure to find truth together. And then it's not me versus you and our egos are on the line and we have this equal and opposite reaction and we both are offended at each other. Instead, we're working together. Be honest when you communicate. Oftentimes I'll hear people in forums going after anti-vaxxers and they're like, vaccines are 100% safe. I'm like, okay, vaccines don't cause autism. We know that. We've tested that. But they're not 100% safe. They're 99.99, ad nauseum % safe, which is a hell of a lot safer than dying of polio. It's like saying, and this is straight from the CDC. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. Like, these are the possible side effects of vaccines, you know? And this is on the Center for Disease Control's website. But they're very, very, very safe. It would be like, what would be more effective? To lie and then they're like, well, actually, someone had an allergic reaction. Or to simply respond with this meme. Anti-vaxxer logic. This bridge is only 99.997% safe. I think I'll swim. Once we have won people over on an emotional level, we've torn down those walls, then they're willing to listen to us. Now, how can we communicate effectively? Here's a couple of things that I found have helped me. One, know your material inside and out, and if you don't, seek out experts. Find who the experts are in the various fields, find out what the scientific consensus is, because if there's a consensus within science, and I'm not talking about, some things have varying levels of consensus on them. For example, multiverse theory. There are physicists who think that there's a multiverse, there's some that aren't, there's varying levels of it. I don't know what percent do and don't. That's a lot different than the percentage of meteorologists and climate scientists who believe in climate change that's man-made. These two things, the evolution is on the end of things that we pretty much know for sure happened by natural selection. Know your material. Be laser focused in your delivery. If you spend a lot of time beating around the bush or chasing tangents, or someone says, well, this, and they're jumping from one thing to another, no, hold them to task with the one claim that they made, ask them how they know it, and then be laser focused in your response. Try to cut out all the ums and the uhs and the likes and the you-knows, the filler words. Try to cut out all the times that you say the same thing 5 different ways. Just go straight to the throat. In order to demonstrate that, I've created a 30 bullet point slide. I'll spare you the torture of reading it. Ask hard questions. Don't be afraid. Don't shy away from asking questions that other people haven't really thought of. Here's an example. People say that, we're made in the image of God.
Why are people made of meat? Why did God make us edible? If we're given dominion over the world and we're supposed to fill the earth and subdue it, then why are we walking meat sacks? If God exists, he is clearly the greatest troll alive. Tells man to rule over the animal kingdom and makes him out of animal food. This would be the equivalent of telling a sentient gummy bear to watch a daycare.
The premise for the second clip is, if you're not familiar, Dr. Michael Persinger discovered a way to take a helmet and using magnets, electromagnetism, he was able to stimulate the temporal parietal junction in someone's brain, causing them to have spiritual and even out-of-body experiences. So you're having this spiritual experience that's stimulated naturally. And so the question is, they're looking at incorporating that into the use in games. And once they do that,
once supernatural experiences can be packaged up and commercialized, will people finally start to realize that it's all in their heads? Or are they gonna start worshiping the God Plumber Mario?
Will they start worshiping Mario? Follow arguments to their logical conclusion. Sometimes this is referred to as reductio ad absurdum. So if you follow the logic of it all the way to its extreme end, does it make sense? Mankind is made in the image of God. People are made of meat. Therefore,
Silent breed is God.
Use analogies. Get people to think outside the box by comparing two things together to make them actually realize maybe the absurdity of a particular topic.
Saying that it takes faith to believe in science is like saying that it takes booze to be sober.
Asking how you can have an objectively moral framework without God is like asking how you can have an objectively good economic framework without the Monopoly guy.
Show, don't tell. And because I'm running out of time, I can't show you this slide, but you get the idea that it would be so much cooler if I actually showed it to you, but instead I'm just going to talk about it. No, this is about prophecy.
And let's not forget all of the pastors who predicted events like the end of the world on a specific date and have always failed. Like when Jesus said that he would return while his disciples were still alive.
So as I'm talking about failed prophecies, I have this endless scrolling list of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of failed prophecies. That's far more effective than simply saying, hey, some prophecies have failed sometime. Show people, demonstrate it, take them to the evidence and point it to them. And most importantly, have fun with it. This is my biggest frustration with science communication. Oftentimes you'll see people who have experience in a topic, they have expertise, they know it inside and out, and yet the presentation is stale. How many of you have sat through a college class of a topic that you were more than delighted to sit through, and then all of a sudden you realize that the professor was boring? If we're able to take a topic that we love, let's show that we love it. Let's actually have fun with it. Let's enjoy the process of exploring these topics. Let's make it a delight, not just for others, but for ourselves. If I try not to put out a video that I wouldn't enjoy watching myself. Put out something that you think that others would enjoy too. Here's an example of that. So Nostradamus, he made a lot of prophecies, right? So I'm like, okay, how can I demonstrate that you can literally predict anything with Nostradamus? I'm like, okay, what is the furthest thing from Nostradamus? Kim Kardashian. And specifically, she went viral on the internet for, having a large rear section. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sift through the quatrains of Nostradamus and see if I can find one that predicted that, right? Here's Century 4, Quatrain 25. The heart of the lover, awakened by furtive love, will ravish the lady in the stream. Now this is specifically talking about people who stumbled across Kim Kardashian's sex tape online and they're streaming it online, it's the stream. She will pretend bashfully to be half injured. She feels like, she's like, oh no, it affected my reputation and my career, but in actuality it springboarded it. But the father of each, that's Tim Berners-Lee, the father of the internet. And because, he's the father of the internet, he says he will derive the body of its soul. Well, clearly that's talking about all of the people who are just online watching it who have no lives. And she lost her life because, now she's just followed everywhere by the soulless paparazzi. That's a demonstration of how you can take something absolutely absurd, hilarious, out there, different, and make it just funny. Just have a good time with it. If you want to see more of my work, I have videos on holykoolaid.com. That's my channel, Holy Koolaid. I also run a conference called the Faithless Forum, which is the first ever conference organized entirely by atheist YouTubers. And lastly, I've put together a bonus clip just to kind of tie it all in, see how many of these things you can spot in this clip.
While people are more impressed when a psychic guesses an exact name, more often than not, psychics just guess an initial.
I feel he's like a J.
He's also showing me a J.
Why can't they just talk? Why does it got to be, there's a J name, there's a this?
Well, because even when guessing the most common guy's name in America, these vultures still get misses.
No.
Is he J-A or J-U? Or is he not John or J, I don't know the name. Jerry, Jeffrey? Jez. Okay, close enough. I don't know that I get that.
No.
Because or the James.
If they go from James to a J-sounding name, then they can radically increase their odds. But sometimes even that fails.
Or J.
Is it J sounding?
Or G, it could be G.
Is her sister Jerry?
Bingo. Throw in a J-sounding G name like George, Gerald, etc. and they even further increase their odds.
They tell me to talk about the J or G name like Jack or James. They tell me to talk about the J or G connection. There's a J or G name that they want me to highlight.
Is there a J or G in that name, like Marjorie?
Is that where like the J or G like George or Jerry comes up? Where's the J or G name? Are you the J or G sounding name like Janie or Joni? Who is the J name?
It's a J or G.
Giovanni, but we called him Johnny.
Jim? Judith?
My name's Jade.
Because it would be too time-consuming to examine every name in America, let's look at the top 200 names in the US over the last 100 years according to the Social Security Administration. 38 of the top 200 names in America start with J or G. That's 19%. To keep the math simple, we'll say 1 in 5. That doesn't seem like that high of a number, but think of it this way. Here's an example of a pretty small family tree. Only counting close relatives like grandparents, parents, uncles, aunts, siblings, nephews, nieces, and cousins, there are already 20 people here. If you're married, you can double that number with in-laws. But I don't want people to accuse me of exaggerating, so I'll lowball the estimate. Now take that 1 in 5 statistic. Odds are that about 4 people in this family of 20 will have a J or a G name. Assuming that no one in the audience is married or has a massive family, then in an audience of about 250 people, there will be approximately 1,000 J or G name family members represented. Now, most people who go to these types of readings go to connect with one or multiple lost family members, meaning that there's probably at least 250 deceased people represented by this audience. If 1 in 5 of those 250 have J or G names, then that's 50 deceased people with J or G names represented in an audience this size. And remember, that's on the low end, assuming everyone has a small family and isn't married. But most people in these audiences are older, probably have larger families, and have probably married at least once, so that number is almost definitely much higher.
So I didn't really have a lot of analogies in that clip, but I tried to keep it laser focused. I tried to show and not tell, actually take clips of people doing this stuff, show the tactics and the methods that they use, and lay it out for people to see. On that note, when you are going out to communicate with the public, think of ways that you can condense it down, make it laser focused, come up with analogies, reach people where they're at, empathize, connect with them, and most importantly, have fun with it. Thank you very much.